Okay guys, so I thought it might be time to do another end of an age Earth Changes update video because we are continuing to see these cold anomalies and these unseasonal snow events unfolding. And when we are starting to see snow still occurring in the southern hemisphere, when we are less than a month away from the beginning of our meteorological summer, which begins on December the 1st, I think it's definitely something we need to pay attention to. Now, anybody who has been following my channel knows that I use the ancient knowledge, and I have actually been studying and researching into this cross-culture mythology, theology, numerology, symbolism, the Hermetic sciences, and I basically study not only the Bible and the Christian scriptures, but all of the religious texts and all of the ancient texts to try and have a full understanding of what is now unfolding across our planet, not only with earth changes, but also with political events. Because when we understand this information on a deeper level, we understand that earth changes and the political events are not something separate. That the material and the spiritual are not separated. Everything is fused, and we have to start seeing everything as a complete picture. And so I have used all of these studies over the last 6, nearly 7 years to give myself a more deeper understanding of why we're seeing all of these dramatic earth changes and why we're seeing this chaos within our political atmosphere that seems to be moving us towards war. And when we look to the ancient Norse, who left us their mythologies, which were actually prophecies, they told us that we could expect Fimbulwinter, which translates to the mighty winter, and that after the mighty winter, nations would go to war. So anyone that wants more information in regards to how I am coming to my conclusions about these cold events and these snow events and why they're happening, I would suggest go and have a look at my previous videos. I did a Fimbulwinter update about 6 months ago, but I've also done other videos going fully into the prophecies, and I've looked cross-culture, and I've looked at the Hermetic principles as well, and I've applied them to the events that are now unfolding on all levels, because we have to look at everything in a spiritual way, in a physical way, and in a mental way. This is what Hermetics teaches us, that there are 3 planes and we have to apply everything to these 3 planes, and that these 3 planes merge into each other. So there's not a complete division between the mental and the spiritual and the physical, that we have to see them as a whole, but we have to also apply everything to these 3 different areas. And so when we actually start looking deeper beneath the mythologies and the texts, we can actually start understanding why we are seeing these events occurring in earth changes and also in these political events that seem to be becoming more chaotic and moving us towards a more violent time on our planet. So these playlists here, End of an Age, Earth Changes, and End of an Age, the Political Stage Show News and Updates, will give you more of an insight to how I have applied this ancient knowledge to what is now unfolding around our planet, and how we need to see these 2 subjects as fused, that we cannot separate the material from the spiritual, and we cannot separate the political from the religious, and also we have to see how the earth changes are connected to everything else that is occurring around our planet. So when we understand that the Norse have left us indicators of how we can see where we're at in the cycle that we exist in, we can understand that when we're seeing these cold events happening more frequently and earlier in the season, that this could be an indicator that we are indeed moving towards Fimbulwinter, the mighty winter, and that this will then lead us to what they say, nations going to war. Now, all of the ancients understood that we existed in a cycle. And so if we can understand that everything in our universe is fractal, and everything that happens in the macrocosm also corresponds to what happens in the microcosm. And we can see this with the principle of correspondence as well when we look to the Hermetic sciences. So when we understand that we exist in a smaller cycle, and we can see this yearly when we look at summer, autumn, winter, spring, we can correspond that to a larger cycle that we exist in, which is the precessional cycle, which is over 26,000 years. And the precessional cycle is broken into the ages. So we've got the Golden Age, we've got the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. And then when we're at the end of this cycle, we reset back into the Golden Age. Now, we are presently in the last degree of the Iron Age, and this is why we are seeing an escalation in all of these earth changes. And this isn't only with these cold anomalies, we are also seeing heat anomalies, we are seeing increased volcanic activity, we are seeing more severe earthquakes happening with more frequency. And when we look at the earthquakes now starting to destroy ancient buildings that were 500 years old in Mexico, this is something we need to start paying attention to. And even last year with the earthquake that happened in Italy, we were seeing ancient structures that were 800-900 years old being reduced to rubble. Now, there was a reason that the ancients built these structures in tectonically active areas. They didn't make a mistake. They left them there because they knew that when we basically done the research, we would understand what they knew. Everything is temporal and everything changes. And that when we start moving towards the end of the age, we are going to start experiencing more severe earth shifts. And we are going to start experiencing more earthquakes. And we are going to start seeing that these earthquakes are going to result in more destruction. And so these buildings, these ancient buildings, are an indicator. They were leaving us clues. They were basically giving us an opportunity to join the dots, because knowledge is occulted by the ancients, because the ancients did not want to reward the mentally lazy with the truth. Only those that take the time to seek out information and seek out knowledge are rewarded with the truth. Anybody that just expects to go to a channel or go to a particular media outlet and be spoon-fed knowledge and expect to gain the truth in that way is never going to actually understand the deeper reasons and influences that are behind everything that is unfolding on our planet. So you will only ever see anything on the surface. You will only ever see everything in an exoteric way instead of an esoteric way. And that's what esoteric means. It means that the information is beneath the surface. You have to seek deeper to reveal that knowledge. Whereas the exoteric is what we see in the mainstream media, what we see when we are just spoon-fed knowledge and handed knowledge on a silver platter. We are not going to see any information on a deeper level, and that's what we require. That's what we need to actually do, is seek a deeper understanding for us to have the complete picture, because at the moment everything's fragmented. And so our responsibility as intellectual humans is to take all those fragments of knowledge that have basically been fragmented by those who have taken power to keep us ignorant. And when we're ignorant, we have no power over our destiny. We have no power over ourselves and over our journey and our experience here on earth. When we are elevated out of ignorance because we've taken the time to go and do the research and study the scriptures, all of the scriptures, and not fear knowledge. And we study all of the texts, and we study archetypal symbolism, and we study the prophecies and the mythologies and, you know, numerology and all of the esoteric sciences and sacred sciences. Then we elevate ourselves out of this ignorance and we take back our power. We take back what was stolen from us by those who seek to keep us ignorant and who seek to keep control over us, because that is how they control us. They have taken all of our knowledge and they have locked all of our knowledge away in their library, and basically by keeping us ignorant to who we are and the cycle that we exist in, and I have done videos in regards to that cycle, so you can look on my channel and find more information about that. But because they have taken that information from us and that understanding from us that we do exist in a cycle, we are very ignorant to who we are and to the actual way that nature works. And because of that, everything seems very confusing, and so we don't understand why these earth changes are occurring, why these weather events are getting more severe, why we're seeing more storms, why we're seeing more rain events, you know, which will continue to escalate. We don't understand why this is happening, and so we are susceptible to their propaganda. And their propaganda is that it is human induced, it is our fault, and that we are experiencing global warming because it is human activity that is causing this to happen. Yet there is absolutely no evidence anywhere that can prove that human activity is causing global warming. And in fact, we are seeing more of these cold events, which also basically confirms that we are seeing anomalies with the temperature in both the hot and the cold. And so we are seeing these temperature anomalies happening in the southern hemisphere as well as the northern hemisphere. So we've seen Australia experiencing snow. We've actually seen New Zealand experiencing snow. They're also in the southern hemisphere. But then if we look to the northern hemisphere, we're still seeing that these cold events are being experienced with more frequency, beginning with Minnesota on the 28th of October, experiencing a record-breaking snowstorm. We've got China on the 30th of October, China's northeast experiences a cold wave, and that's how we actually are starting to see these temperature anomalies playing out. Anybody who has been observing the data, the raw data, and paying attention to the actual, you know, weather events can see that we're experiencing these heat waves, and then they'll be followed by a cold wave. And so we're seeing this polarity in the hot and cold, and it's when they take these heat anomalies and they will take a spike in the temperature and average them out over the whole month or the whole year even, that they start with this propaganda that we have just experienced the hottest month on record or the hottest year on record. It's because they're using these averages to fudge the data and to hide these cold events, because you will see that they make a lot of you know, a big deal about these heat events and these heat anomalies, and then they will start tying them into climate change, which they equate to global warming, which then they equate to human behavior, when in fact they don't do the same when we see these unprecedented cold events. They don't seem to continue to relate that to how this is showing that the earth isn't warming, that the climate is changing. Yes, we are experiencing climate change. We are not experiencing global warming. We are experiencing climate change, and this shift is happening with both hot temperatures and cold temperatures. We're seeing anomalies on both ends of the scale, and this is not what the mainstream media will tell you. And so we also see that the UK is bracing for polar winds and snow, and they're saying this is because the La Nina is taking hold. Now, anybody that has taken the time to do the research knows that the La Nina and the El Nino are actually naturally occurring events. What happens is that at the equator, we are experiencing a warming, which is a El Nino, or we are experiencing a cooling, which is a La Nina. Now, this in turn will change the temperature of the oceans. Now, this is something that is naturally occurring, and scientists have admitted they do not understand what triggers a La Nina or El Nino. They do not understand the influences behind, or the triggers behind, why these events are occurring. However, they will use the El Nino, which then will change the weather patterns and bring in heat anomalies, as a way to exclaim that we are moving into global warming, because we have just seen these, these unprecedented heat temperatures. They don't actually go on to explain that these heat anomalies are caused by the El Nino, which is actually a naturally occurring event. It has nothing to do with human behavior. So this is why we have to self-educate. This is why we have to take the time to go and do the research, so we do not fall into their propaganda, and we understand that they are hiding the truth. They are hiding the fact that we are also experiencing these cold anomalies and these snow events that are happening more frequently and more often and earlier in the season. We are seeing that there is an Arctic cold blast about to make its appearance in the northeast and the Midwest, and they're saying that this is going to threaten daily record lows. This is due to happen this weekend, and they're also saying that the polar vortex is going to return yet again, and that is going to unleash bitterly cold air. So again, we're getting more confirmation that we're going to have a very brutal winter. And so what I am trying to do is use these indicators, use these events to confirm for us what the Norse were leaving us, the information that the Norse were leaving us, occulted in their mythology, so that we would understand what part of the cycle that we were in. Now, the cycle that we're in on that macrocosm, on that larger level, is a 26,000-year cycle. And each degree of that cycle, there are 360 degrees in the great year. And each degree equates to 72 years. And so you can see how these events can play out over longer periods of time, which we feel are taking, a very long time to happen. But when we look at it when we look at it in context to how slowly the great year cycle unfolds, we can see that this is why that these events don't happen in 1 year or 2 years, that they play out over a longer period of time. And our responsibility is to continue to observe, continue to basically listen to our instincts that are telling us there are deeper reasons to why we are seeing these earth changes and why we are seeing these political events escalate. And we need to trust in that, rather than just trust in the information that the mainstream media is feeding us to keep us trapped in this external mentality, this physical mentality, and this physical understanding of who we are, when in fact we're actually spiritual first and foremost. And we can actually look at the galactic cycle, the galactic year or the great year, as more of a spiritual cycle, and the solar year as more of a physical cycle. And so we have to actually address both sides of who we are and both sides of our existence and the nature of our whole creation so that we can have a bigger and more clearer understanding of everything that it's occurring, everything that is occurring now, that is happening on not only a spiritual level but also a material level. Because those that have taken power, those who control all of our governments, which are the Jesuit, who have infiltrated over many, many centuries, all of our governments and all of our religious organizations, they fully understand that we are spiritual beings first and foremost. They fully understand why these earth changes are occurring. And that is why the political events are reflecting the huge shifts that we are experiencing in our climate, in our earth now, with, you know, not only earthquakes, not only volcanic activity increasing, but also severe weather events increasing, rain events escalating. We are seeing huge rain events, huge unprecedented flooding events, and these are continuing to happen with more frequency. So that is all connected to the political events and the political stage show. And those who have taken power of our governments and of our world, they know this. They know this with absolute, and, you know, there is no doubt that they know exactly what is approaching mankind. And so we need to continue to just observe these events. We need to basically ignore what the media are reporting and go and look at the raw data for ourselves, and go and pay attention to all of these smaller media outlets that are reporting on these cold anomalies and these snow events. And we need to ensure that we are responsible for accessing that information, rather than just going to one major media outlet and having them tell us everything within, you know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because they are not going to report on all of these events that are happening. We need to go and look at them all for ourselves and then bring them all together and understand, yes, we are definitely seeing more cold events. We are definitely seeing more anomalies. We now have Crystal Mountain saying that they are going to bring forward their snow season, their skiing season, by 2 weeks, November the 10th instead of November the 25th, because if they have the amount of snow they're expecting on Friday, this will give them reason to open early. And so again, if we look at these events as just individual events, then we can lose sight of the bigger picture. But when we're actually seeing all of these events together and we're understanding why they're all happening, then we can see the picture a lot clearer, and we can have an understanding for what has been taken from us and why they don't want us to know the truth of who we are and why these events are occurring. Now, just before I go, I will actually just relate a story in regards to why they are seeing the Antarctic ice sheet melting, and that is because there is a supervolcano underneath the ice sheet. So it is not global warming, increasing ocean temperatures, and then the ocean temperatures are melting the ice sheet and increasing sea level. This is not what is happening. What is happening is that we are seeing increased volcanic activity everywhere, and that includes the poles. And this is why we're seeing parts of the ice sheets are actually gaining ice and parts of the ice sheet are actually losing ice. It's because there are volcanoes underneath the ice sheet and they are melting them. Once again, we have to dig deeper if we want to see through the propaganda that they are pushing on us. There is no global warming and humans are not responsible for it. We are experiencing a shift in the climate because we are experiencing a shift in the ages. And we are experiencing a shift in the ages because we are existing in a cycle. And all of the ancients basically relayed information about this cycle right back to the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, the Hindu, the Maya, the Norse. They all explained to us that we exist in this cycle and that at the end of this cycle we could expect to experience major shifts in not only the climate, but also political. Political events were also going to occur. And as the Norse have warned us, that after the mighty winter, nations would go to war. And we are indeed seeing an increase in the rhetoric, and the war drums are getting louder every day, that are bringing us to a more violent time on our planet. And so we use this knowledge that was left to us from the ancients to basically prepare ourselves on every level, mentally, spiritually, and physically. Well, I will leave it here, guys. I will post all of these links underneath so you can have a look at that for yourself in more detail. And as always, take care and peace out.